So, I was browsing a Star Wars subreddit the other day, Star Wars Speculation, when I came across an interesting question. Essentially, the original poster was asking why Jedi or Sith simply didn't turn off their lightsabers during battle, and to be clear, they're not referring to using the Force to turn off their opponent's lightsaber, but rather turning their own off to bypass a block or otherwise gain a tactical advantage. And I saw a lot of pretty poor answers in that thread, and to be completely fair, subreddits like the Maw installation are a lot better for lore questions than ones based on speculation. The original poster stated that his friend said Jedi and Sith didn't do so because it was a quote-unquote secret technique that they agreed on not to use. That's obviously not true, because the rivalry of the two factions meant that they never would have agreed to something like that, especially with how the Sith operate. Others stated that it had to do with the lightsaber's containment field remaining active after the blade shut off. The real answer is, well, Jedi and Sith actually did use this technique. In canon, we see the basic usefulness of creative lightsaber movement and quick blade use during the guard fight in The Last Jedi, which I do actually quite like, but the specific technique discussed in the question also has a background in legends, which I'll focus on today. Though such a basic action of turning your lightsaber off for a tactical advantage could easily be performed on the fly, and surely was, there was also a specific name for the move, Trakata. I'm mostly familiar with the use of Trakata by Corran Horn in the New Jedi Order, but first let's look at its background, and specifically the Jedi Path, which discusses, among other things, lightsaber fighting styles and advanced techniques. The description is pretty basic. Trakata takes advantage of the lightsaber's unique ability to turn off its blade. The guide implies several sub-techniques, including passing the blade, where a Jedi shuts off their lightsaber as they attack, only turning off their blade briefly as the sabers are about to clash, reigniting it for a killing blow. Alternatively, Jedi instead may deactivate their saber as a way to throw an enemy off balance, or as a way to confuse their opponent. So, pretty logical, and it makes a lot of sense, but it's interesting to me to know that it was feasible enough to be categorized as a specific fighting technique and thus analyzed and used by the Jedi. This brings us to the New Jedi Order and the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. She swung her blue blade to batter Corran Horn's blade aside, but got no spark and hiss from a collision of the blades. Her mighty swing spun her around, and as she completed the circle, the blue blade carved an infinity symbol in the air before her. She dropped back 2 steps, then thumbed her blade off and bowed in Corran Horn's direction, before slumping to her knees with sweat, pasting locks of hair to her cheeks. So, besides for the overuse of the word blade, what happened in that excerpt I just read? Well, that's Corran and Mara in a sparring contest, with Corran goading Mara into an aggressive lightsaber strike before turning his weapon off. Mara doesn't meet the expected resistance, and her momentum carries her around, exposing her back to Corran in what would have been a killing blow, had they not been simply sparring. And this technique actually worked really well for Horn, because alongside his study of Trakata, he had what was known as a dual-phase lightsaber. Dual-phase lightsabers were able to very quickly vary the length of their blade. Well, almost all sabers could do so manually, usually by adjusting a knob. With the dual form saber, you simply clicked a button and the length changed almost right away. Corran basically experimented with using Trakata as a third phase, attacking with reach, attempting to force his opponent to strike back, then using Trakata. Later in that same book, Dark Tide 2 Ruin, he has a chance to try it out against a Yuuzhan Vong warrior. Specifically, Corran battles Yuuzhan Vong commander Shaydao Shai in an honor duel. Basically, Corran forces Shaydao into aggressiveness, while also taking a near-fatal wound to his side. As Shaydao batters Corran to his knees, he brings down his amphistaff to smash against the Jedi Master's lightsaber, but meets no resistance. Corran had turned off his lightsaber at the very last moment, while also leaning forward and dodging the killing blow. That caused the Vong's amphistaff to both miss and be stuck in the ground. Corran very simply put his weapon up to the side of the Yuuzhan Vong warrior and ignited it, severing his spine and killing him almost instantly. So Trakata does seem pretty useful, but its effectiveness admittedly is limited. As Mara says, turning your lightsaber off in the middle of battle is a foolish thing to do. Corran, however, employed it as a way of evening the odds against the Yuuzhan Vong, after the Jedi were unable to use the Force to aid them during battle because of the Vong's lack of connection to the Force. It's tough though, because it only works, as I said, in certain situations. If the enemy is going to strike at your blade, then turning it off means that you run the risk of just being hit yourself. That's why the technique is probably best used offensively, where the enemy has positioned their blade defensively, or in a position where the enemy's slash will miss. Corran used his during the sparring match in a sort of unique way. He lengthened the blade and basically gave Mara an opportunity to knock the saber out of his hand, then used her aggressive swing against her. Presumably when fighting Force sensitives, the difficulty is that battles can be ended in mere seconds. So if the attacker is able to bypass your basic defenses, then you also run the risk of being killed extremely quickly. However, Corran was far from the only Jedi to use this technique. Interestingly, the book states, although this isn't clear in the movie, actually turned off his blade immediately before being struck by Vader. That's certainly not what it looks like to me, but okay. Anyway, that's a basic overview on Trakata. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. Today's hashtag AskEck question of the day comes from Swole, who asks how come starfighter pilots aren't torn apart during combat, and it all comes down to a handy little device known as an inertial compensator. And compensators or dampeners are really the only thing that makes massive acceleration possible in starfighters. As for accelerating ships having difficulty doing tight turns, I would say yeah, that pretty accurately describes the scenario. Thank you very much for the question. If you guys have any you'd like me to answer in a future video, please leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck. Anyway guys, that's been all for today. Until next time, have a great day, and as always, may the Force be with you.